Welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast, where we connect, engage, and empower fathers to be the best dads they can be for their families and communities. And now, your hosts are Bruce Stapleton and Pastor Eli Williams.
Hello, welcome to Fathering Strong podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Bruce Stapleton, father and grandfather of four and owner of the Momentum Group.
My name is Eli Williams. I'm a father, a grandfather, an author, pastor, and president of Urban Light Ministries, which is the nonprofit that powers Fathering Strong.
Well, in today's episode, we're going to continue with our April topic, concluding the 5-part series on raising safe, smart, and healthy kids. We got a real interesting topic this week on keeping your kids addiction free. So it's sort of amazing that almost 47 million Americans that are 12 years and over are suffering from substance abuse. And we really think fathers can have a critical impact on keeping your kids addiction free. So Eli, it was really an interesting blog post that we put out this week when I was reading it, going through it. So tell us a little bit more, give us some more guidance. I think this is a topic that most dads want to hear about.
Yeah, that's right, Bruce. It is an important topic. And many of us, men and fathers, have had family members and friends who've battled substance abuse. Perhaps you yourself are in recovery even now. And you're determined to make sure that your kids don't suffer the devastating consequences of substance abuse. And the good news is that there are things that parents, whether they have suffered from a substance abuse problem themselves or not, things that we can do to help our children avoid the scourge of addiction. So we're going to talk about a few of those things today. First, I want to look at how widespread the problem really is. According to the 2022 United States National Survey on Drug Abuse and Health, 46.8 million Americans, as you said earlier, aged 12 and older, battled some kind of substance abuse disorder. That includes alcohol, illegal drugs, prescription drugs, and other substances. That's a big number. Imagine, if you will, and those of you who are from around the Ohio area, or you're in Buckeye Nation anywhere in the world, imagine Ohio Stadium in Columbus, right, where the Buckeyes play football. That massive stadium can hold roughly 103,000 people. If you've ever been there or even seen it on TV, you know that that's a huge number of people. Well, think about it. 47 million people roundabout with a substance abuse issue. That would be the equivalent of filling up Ohio Stadium, emptying it out, filling it up again, emptying that out, filling it up again, 456 times with substance abuse addicted teens and adults. That paints a pretty grim picture. It's a lot of people, a lot of suffering. Now, in that same year that this survey is talking about, slightly more than 10% of all Americans 12 and over had an alcohol abuse disorder, and a little less than, I think, 9.7% of adults and teens reported battling a drug abuse disorder. So alcohol and drugs are a massive problem, and really that's an understatement. Dr. Alessa Salter is a Swiss American developmental psychologist. She's an international speaker and consultant. She's an expert in this. She's written 6 books, and she's recognized internationally as an expert on these things. In her article of the same name, Raising Drug-Free Kids, she offers 5 basic principles that we need to remember when raising drug-free kids. And the first principle is spend time with your children. Now, Bruce, we talk about this all the time, don't we? I mean, it seems like every other podcast we're talking about spending time with your kids. Why? Because it is absolutely one of the most important things we as dads can do for our kids. Spending time. It's probably a well-worn proverb now. Kids spell love, Time. It's true. Children who lack a close relationship with at least one loving parent are at risk for substance abuse, no matter how much discipline you impose on them. It's not about scaring them, it's not by beating it out of them. The fact is, according to this article, and I believe it's true, the root cause of most behavioral problems is not the lack of discipline, but it's rather the lack of connection. It's simple. Close relationships with children are built through maximizing time with them. Does that sound like a broken record, Bruce? It kind of does to me.
Sounds like the same thing we keep saying. And, we always talk about, quality time, but you got to have quantity time too, right? I mean, you've got to spend time with kids.
Absolutely. It's the number one thing we can do, the first principle when it comes to raising addiction-free kids. The second principle, also important, is our approach to discipline of our children. We're going to take a break for an important announcement. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about that and some other tips that you can use in helping your kids avoid the scourge of substance abuse. Please stay with us.
We dads and father figures need each other. We need a safe, non-judgmental place to share our stories, challenges, heartaches, and joys. Fathering Strong is just such a place. A new online community of connected, engaged, and empowered fathers. Learn more at www.fatheringstrong.com.
All right, well, welcome back to Fathering Strong Podcast. We got a real interesting subject we're talking about this week in regards to keeping your kids addiction free. So, Eli just talked about the importance of spending time with your kids. That's one of the key prevention tools on a lot of different things. And I think it's just a matter of, it's hard for the kid to have a role model if you're not there. It's really showing them how to act, how to behave, those kinds of things. So tell us a few more. We talked about the second one, the other tips that we have. Keep going. Let us know. I think this is an interesting topic that dads need to hear.
Yeah. Another important principle is using a democratic approach to discipline. And I know someone's going to say, we're going to raise soft kids now. Yeah, we're going to be permissive. It's really not about that. Dr. Salter recommends a non-punitive approach to training children. I think you'll see the point here as we go along here. A non-punitive approach. We're talking about a more nurturing way of raising kids that's less likely to cause rebellion. Now, this doesn't really require being permissive. It's just being a little less authoritarian and gentler as a disciplinarian. She states, and I'm quoting here, researchers have found that children whose parents use verbal reasoning rather than punitive consequences when the children were 5 years old were less likely to be involved with any of the gateway drugs, tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, by age 12, end quote. See, the last thing that any loving parent wants is for his child to rebel against him. And kids sometimes, because they lack power and they're really not able to express their anger or their frustration, they'll look for other ways to kind of medicate themselves. That means substance abuse. And sometimes it's because of having had a parent who was too harsh in their discipline. Again, that does not mean being permissive with your child, but it could mean, for example, sitting down with your child and discussing rules of behavior. If you do this, these are the consequences. If you fail to do this, these are the consequences. And what's really cool is letting your child help set what the punishment is. It has been found that children are often tougher on themselves than the parents really are. So sometimes the parent has to say, "No, wait, that's a little bit too harsh for that infraction." Let's say the child's supposed to pick up their clothes, put their shoes in the proper place, pick their clothes up, keep a neat and tidy room. So that's a reasonable expectation. So that's what's required, and the penalty for not doing it could be something that fits that crime. You know what I mean? You pick it. Let's say like no dessert. A child may come up with something much more harsher than that, because well, they probably don't really get the concept of the punishment fitting the crime. But I think that's interesting. The important thing is that the child being a part of the rule setting and the consequence setting means that when there is a need to discipline the child understands what they did wrong and that they are paying the price based on what was agreed ahead of time. So that's what's meant by a democratic style of discipline. It works, and the child is less likely to feel that they've been treated unjustly or too harshly or whatever. So less likely to be angry, and therefore less likely to look for a way to express that anger that doesn't get them into even more trouble with that parent. It reminds me of a scripture, Ephesians 6:4, which tells fathers to provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. We fathers need to be careful that we don't anger our children and cause them um, to want to lash out, because they really don't have the power, being the child, to lash out, and therefore look for some other way of soothing their pain, rebelling, getting back at the parent. So Bruce, I hope that kind of helps paint a picture of what a democratic style of discipline looks like. Uh, maybe you've experienced something like this on the negative or positive side in raising your children. Anything you want to share?
Well, I think one of the key things is that I learned is they really need to understand that you love them. It's the behavior that you have an issue with. And so if they feel like they're loved and you're not scolding them, then they really think about it. Well, what can I do to change my actions? It's my behavior that they don't like. And so I think, those are ways that you can help them understand, hopefully a little bit clearer, that it's not about them, it's about their behavior. And then hopefully, they will listen and give themselves a harder discipline. So
Yes, absolutely spot on. So that brings us to the third principle for raising drug-free kids: accept your child's emotions. Now, yes, children have emotions. We know that. But what we don't want is for our children to bottle up their emotions, to not express how they're feeling, and therefore over time have all these accumulated unhealed hurts and unresolved issues and unmet needs. That's a lot of baggage for anyone, even an adult, to carry around. When you've got that kind of pain on the inside, it can lead to seeking relief, and sometimes that results in seeking relief through substances. So it's important as parents for us to allow our children to express themselves, however they are prone to do it. Let them feel like they can express themselves without judgment. Now it could be crying, it could be a temper tantrum, raging, or in some other way acting out. But those just may be expressions of some painful emotions that they're having. Dr. Salter, in her article, advises parents to, and I'm quoting her, be alert for signs of stress, anxiety, or depression in your children. And don't assume that time will heal all wounds. If necessary, look for a competent psychotherapist to help your family through difficult times. Allowing your children to express themselves freely and heal from stress or trauma is one of the most important steps you can take to strengthen their resistance to drugs, end quote. So rather than telling your child that they shouldn't feel a certain way, it's healthier to let them express what they're feeling, to help them process it in a healthy way. That's much more loving than rejecting their emotions or criticizing their emotions or the expression of their emotions and causing them to bury their feelings, because that could lead to substance abuse to ease the pain that they're feeling. And that's what we want to avoid. I had an experience, Bruce, when I was fairly newly married. Um, my wife, Judy, would have um, something that she's unhappy about. And, uh, had the tendency to say to her, "Oh, honey, you shouldn't feel that way." And over time, it got to her. She just had to say something eventually. What do you mean I shouldn't feel that way? It's the way I feel. You're going to tell me how to feel now? and that woke me up. That helped me to understand that, hey, wait a minute. Let people have their feelings. Allow them, give them permission to have their feelings and to express what they're feeling. Would I rather they bottle it up, not talk about it, just suck it all up and wait for the explosion that will surely come? So that was my lesson in marriage, and it also helped when it comes to dealing with children and actually anyone. It's important to let people um, say what they feel without judgment. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and putting the three things you've talked about together, I think really helped with that. I mean, if you give them the time, if they understand how to be disciplined, and they understand that they can freely express their emotions, they'll do it in a way that is reasonable and, not overly over the top if they know that they're going to be heard. If they don't know they're going to be heard, they're going to react. And, that's when they start yelling and screaming and kicking and screaming because they want attention because they haven't gotten the attention before. So I think a lot of it has to do with them understanding how to effectively communicate and express themselves. And that comes with time, that comes with discipline, and that comes with understanding their emotions, the three things you talked about.
Yeah, that's right. The fourth principle for helping your child grow up addiction free has to do with being a good role model. And we're going to talk about that after this break.
Do you know a new father who could benefit from a basic introduction to healthy fathering principles? POPS 101, a free online course consisting of 4 one-hour sessions in English or Spanish, could be perfect for him. POPS 101 lays out practical steps toward becoming the protector, order keeper, provider, and stabilizer his child needs. Learn more at urbanlight.org.
Welcome back to Fathering Strong Podcast. We're considering things dads and moms can do to raise their addiction-free children. We've talked about time, talked about how to discipline, we've talked about emotion. So now we're going to look at a role model. So Eli, tell us a little bit more about that and how these dads can stay interested and keep their kids addiction-free.
Yeah, probably most dads listening to us right now have never said to your child, "Do as I say, not as I do." I doubt if very many of us have ever uttered those words. And I'm wrong because Bruce has.
I'm raising my hand.
But that doesn't work, does it? I mean, the problem with that is children are naturally going to mimic what their parents do eventually. So the fourth principle is be a good role model. I mean, even if you have had an addiction yourself, right? We first want to say it's important that you seek the help that you need in some kind of treatment program. But whether you're addicted to alcohol or drugs or not, including prescriptions, it's imperative that you seek professional help right away if you do have an issue like that. But whether or not you do, there are things that we can do to help our children grow up healthy and whole and drug free. It sadly, and very tragically, that is, addictive behavior can be generational. It can be passed on from generation to generation. There's something about, and I'm not a medical person, not a scientist, but I've read enough to understand that parents' uh, DNA actually can impact their children in ways that the children have a tendency to lean toward certain things, such as substance abuse. So it can be a generational thing. I'm going to quote Dr. Salter here in her article, Raising Drug Free Kids. She said, "If you are the child of an alcoholic, you may find it difficult to be the kind of parent you want to be because you lacked good role models. Look for a support group," she says, "a support group for adult children of alcoholics, and seek other parents who are struggling with the same issues that you're facing." End quote. This is so very important. If you've had a substance abuse problem in your past, it's important to get the help you need. Surround yourself with others who are on a journey of recovery, and get the professional help that you need. It's important that you also recognize the fact that you may have come from a family. You may have had a parent or both parents who had some kind of addiction, and understand that it's something that you have no control over as far as uh, what they have done in their past, but that it's your responsibility as a parent to make sure you get the help that you need so that you don't then pass it on to your children. You can be the end of that curse on your family. So seek the help that you need in order to break free, to enter into recovery and remain in recovery for the sake of your children. That brings us to the fifth and final principle for raising addiction-free kids. Give your child age-appropriate information. Dr. Salter recommends when your children reach the teen years, the best way to convey information about drugs and alcohol is through teachable moments. For example, if a car accident was caused by someone driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, mention it to your teen and invite an exchange of feelings. What do you think about that? Why do you think that happened? Another effective approach is to role play real or imaginary scenarios and invite your teens to practice saying no to their peers. And remember to keep it fun because you're dealing with kids, right? So that's the end Dr. Salter's comments about it. And there are a lot of other suggestions that we have included in our blog on this topic, this week's blog. So look it up. Let me just go through a few of them. For younger kids, elementary school kids, this fifth and final principle of giving your child age-appropriate information here, when it applies to younger kids, use everyday examples. For example, explain addiction through things they understand, like eating too much candy. I mean, every child can understand that. Our brains can get used to things, and sometimes it's hard to stop. Focus on feelings. Let them know that addiction can make people feel sad, lonely, or grumpy. And make sure you've got open communication. Let them know that they can always talk to you. If they're having questions or see something that worries them, let them know that they can come to you and you can talk about it together no matter what it is. For older kids, teens and tweens, start a conversation. Just start talking. Ask them what they already know about addiction. Because again, we don't want to answer questions they're not asking, right? Because it may be too much for them at that particular moment. But you know your child. So kind of quiz them a little bit to find out what they already know and then start from there. And that helps you then to be able to open the floor for conversation in a way that's appropriate for where they are at that particular time. Be honest and direct with your teens. I mean, they know, they can sense what's fake. They know what's real, and what isn't. So be honest and direct. Give them facts, not rumors and innuendo, not things that are questionable, but make sure that it's factual information that you're providing about addiction. That it is actually a disease that affects the brain. And I know there was resistance to that science for many, many years. Folks refused to believe that addiction is actually a disease of the brain. There was a feeling that no, it's about choices. It's about making good decisions. Yeah, there's some of that involved, but after the disease has started to take hold, it actually does change the brain. And sometimes it only takes one hit, one dose of something like crack cocaine. One hit of crack cocaine, just to name one drug, can addict a person because it actually changed the makeup of the brain. And now the brain demands it. And it's so addictive because once you've had that one hit, it is so intense that the second hit, the third hit, the fourth hit doesn't do it. And so it creates this constant trying to achieve that first high, and it never happens. And so that's how the addiction is so strong with just a little bit of drug. Address peer pressure with your kids. We were all teens ourselves, so we know what peer pressure for a teen is like. So it's important to discuss these challenges with your kids and to help them to know how to turn it down, how to say no, how to walk away. And sometimes doing role play can help them to practice walking away, saying no. And finally, focus on support. Let them know that there's help available for people who are struggling with addiction. They may know people who are struggling with addiction. Could be a family member who is struggling with an addiction. And let them know that there is help available and that recovery is possible. People do recover. So give them that hope so that they know it is not totally a lost cause when someone has an addiction. That is, if they are willing to reach out for the help that they need. So that's a lot. And there's more. That's all we can talk about today. But I want to encourage you to go to our Fathering Strong blog post for this week and get more information on this topic. There are local sources where you can get information on this topic, like Al-Anon. Even your county health department has information on drug addiction and recovery. So I want to encourage you to seek out other help, other information that would help not only you, but also when it comes to raising addiction-free children.
Well, thanks for joining us today on the Fathering Strong podcast. It's been a great month with April. So if you're a first-time listener, go back and take a listen to some of the other podcasts or read the other blog posts on raising safe and smart, healthy kids. We've talked over the last weeks on promoting child safety. We've looked at how to safeguard your child's privacy. We looked at the Father's Guide to Raising Healthy Kids. And then last week, we talked about Empowering Fathers, a guide to nurturing intelligence and love for learning in children. So go back, take a listen to those podcasts if you haven't had a chance to, or go to fatheringstrong.com, register, and you can take a look at the blog post. So next week,
Mother's Day's on the way.
What's that?
Mother's Day's on the way.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It says next week, we're going to be offering some suggestions for celebrating moms, just in time for special Mother's Day. So we're going to be celebrating moms in May, so join us then.
The Word of God tells us, and you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. That's Ephesians 6:4. In parting, may the Lord bless you as you give your child what no one else on earth can, your fully developed father love. That's Fathering Strong. So long.
Thanks for joining the Fathering Strong podcast. Is a production of Urban Light Ministries with technical assistance from the Momentum Group, and Harold Rayford provides the theme music. So thanks for listening.
Fathering Strong is powered by Urban Light Ministries, a not-for-profit organization serving the needs of families and children for nearly 30 years. Your support helps us continue turning the hearts of fathers to their children while meeting some of the immediate critical needs of struggling families with small children. Contributions of all sizes are welcomed at www.urbanlight.org.